Good morning, everybody. I hope everyone had a great weekend. Hope everyone's feeling well and good. Last week, I gave you two political cartoons to look at. And I promised you I'd do a video showing you how to look at political cartoons. Now, for the sixth graders, this may seem a bit strange because it's probably something you haven't really encountered before. For the seventh and eighth graders, you guys have encountered this before, but it's maybe something that you've struggled with in the past. The reason I like to look at political cartoons in E&L is because it involves a lot of original thought. It involves inferring information from things that you look at, and also anyone can do it because it doesn't involve very complex vocabulary. It just involves looking at a picture and trying to decide, trying to make connections with the real world, with yourself, with those around you, about what it's trying to say. And then if we go one step further, whether or not you agree with the message being conveyed. Now, in this video, we're going to look at this. This is the first political cartoon. Now, a political cartoon could well appear normally in a magazine or more frequently in a newspaper. Newspapers have been around in one form or another ever since the birth of America. So, a lot of political cartoons throughout history will be used to convey important subjects. The abolition of slavery, state rights, or all these, whether or not the US should enter the First World War, all these things were being addressed through satire, through political cartoons in newspapers of the day. And that's why social studies teachers like to give you the cartoon to try and make your own inferences as to what was being said. A lot of times very simple drawings make very complex issues, simple drawings convey very complex ideas. So this idea is an issue that in education we've been thinking about a lot. You have over here, you have a thing saying China, a desk saying China, and there's a guy reading math. And then you have a desk saying India, and there's a guy reading a science textbook. And then you have the USA, and obviously the student has the book closed, arm on top of the book, an iPhone, an iPod, and is blowing gum, headphones, isn't listening to what's going on, and there's music coming out. And in addition, instead of having glasses, he has a baseball cap. Okay, now, is that relevant? I don't know. Let's talk about it. Okay, so that is the cartoon we were looking at. So I asked you, and of course at the top it says study habits. Okay, so I asked you to look at that cartoon and tell me what you thought about it, what it was saying. I'm going to read the question to you that I wrote down for you guys. What is happening in this picture? Is it a fair representation of students in America? Why or why not? Now, we had some very interesting responses, and I'm going to read you a couple of responses that we had because they were very good. One response said, it is not fair because in the USA, students are allowed to bring their phone into class. So I think what that student was saying is that this implies that the student's doing something wrong. The student is breaking the rules somehow. And there is the same standard for all these countries within the classroom. And they're saying, but no, we're allowed to bring our phones into class. This is implying that we're not, and this is a rule breaker. So that's unfair. Now, I am inferring that from what this response was written and given to me. I'm inferring that because there is only one sentence to the response. Although I think this student who responded had a very good point, and could have made a very good argument. Because I only got one sentence, it wasn't articulated in a way where I can say, I see where you're coming from. So the first thing, when you're responding to anything and they give you a paragraph, when you see there are 5 lines on a test, or you see in a book there's 5 lines, or they give you a big box to reply into, don't write one sentence. It doesn't matter how good that sentence is. It's not enough information. There's not enough details in order for the teacher, the professor, whoever, to make a conclusion as to what your ideas are. Someone else wrote, in this picture, 3 different countries of students are represented, China, India, and the USA. It is not a fair representation of students in America, because you cannot judge everyone based on just a picture of one student. And it must be noted that in India, students cannot go to school because of money problems. So that's not a fair representation of Indian schools either. American schools have strict rules with phones, hats, and bubblegum, so you won't see this in all schools. So I like this response. They were taking issue with the representation in the cartoon. I can see, if I was writing this response, I would have added one more line to say it is an oversimplification. It is not a fair representation. But still, no one has said what they think the artist was trying to say. So let's read another response. In the picture, there are 3 boys from 3 different countries. They're at school. 2 of them are reading a book. They're from China and India. And one of the students is not studying. He is from the USA, and he is listening to music on his phone, chewing gum, and his book is not open. The other 2 boys, one from China and one from India, they have uniform on, but a boy from the USA does not have uniform, and he has a cap on. I do not think it's a fair representation of students in America, because in all countries, students have to study to make better for their future and for their community. That was a fantastic response. That was a great response. Once again, as a student looking at this, they said, hang on, this isn't fair. This isn't a fair representation of study habits in America. So they told me what's happening. Very good description of what's happening, by the way. And then they turned around and said, but that's not fair. And I'm going to tell you why it's not fair. Students in America do study hard. Okay, I'm going to go on to another response. Okay, so this one actually tells us what they think the artist was trying to do. In this picture, the artist is trying to demonstrate how differently children study in other countries. In my opinion, the representation is not fair. So I'm just going to stop that one right there. Immediately, the student has said, this is what the picture is trying to show. And now, this is my opinion on what they've tried to show. Okay. I say that this representation is not fair because the representation is simply not true. The children in the USA get the education as needed, and not all children from the USA look how the artist is trying to portray. Also, the race that the artist is using is not true. Many people from many different races study in the USA. And also, it is unfair to say that just the Chinese study math, and that if you go to India, you are studying science. That was a fantastic response, and I'll tell you why. Because not only are they saying, you know what, it's unfair to say here we have a white kid representing the USA, but that's not the case, especially in schools in New York. We have a lot of diversity, many different people, and that's not a fair representation of everyone in America. Secondly, I take umbrage, which means I disagree. I take offense to the fact that you look at someone who's from China and say immediately they're good at math, or you look at someone from India and say immediately they're good at science. That's not fair either. That's a gross generalization. Who knows? I mean, you've got 1.3 billion people in China, 1 billion people in India. You're saying everyone is good at that subject or that subject. That's not fair representation either. I like that response. One more. In this picture, there is a Chinese student that's reading a math book. An Indian student's reading a science book. Both of them glasses, and both of them are looking at the American student that is listening to music. He has a hat on when he is inside and he's chewing gum, but he's not reading a book. It is not fair because not everybody is like that. Now, I like that response. That response was from a lower level, so maybe it doesn't have as much details as the prior response, but it's a fantastic piece of thinking. I really enjoyed reading what you guys had to say. I really did. I think you met the challenge. Now, this is not a difficult political cartoon, but it can be difficult to view our opinions. Just understand one thing. If you write a little bit and you don't get your opinion across, it's not good. Because I can't read your mind. You want to put what's in your mind on the paper. There is no wrong opinion about this. There is no wrong opinion about this as long as you can back it up with evidence from what you see. So let's think about what people said. People said this is someone from the USA. We don't agree with that because the USA is multicultural. So that's not necessarily, that's a stereotype to say there's this child sitting there in the USA. Also, the fact that, I remember one student said the fact that he had a phone doesn't mean it's a bad thing. He might be studying on it. He's allowed to have a phone in class. Someone else mentioned it's rude to have a hat on inside. And that's why he has the hat on. Now, I didn't even think about that. I didn't even think about that. So that meant that student saw something that I did not see. A couple of you mentioned the fact that it's not fair to generalize the Chinese or the Indian student either. And even though it's seen as a positive thing, it's still not fair. It's an unfair generalization. And it's an oversimplification just to say this is representative of the study habits in these three countries. And also, and this is the most important thing, if you don't listen to anything else, the text to self evidence, the text to self connection. A few of you said, well, hang on, I know what it's like to study in India, or I know I have friends who study in China. That's not true. Now, a lot of people reading that cartoon won't have that experience. So remember, you can bring your own unique experience into making inferences to these cartoons. Okay? So that was on Monday, I think I gave you that cartoon, or Wednesday. The next day I gave you another cartoon, and we're going to talk about that cartoon in my next video. But I am very, very impressed with the way you attack this. Once again, this isn't just an exercise to pass time. This is very important. You will be sitting there in social studies and ELA looking at these cartoons when you were at middle school, high school, and college. And for the rest of your life, if you get a newspaper, you'll be looking at political cartoons. And you need to be able to decipher what's going on and whether or not you agree. Okay, I hope you have a fantastic day, and I will speak to you either in the live class or I will see you next time on YouTube. Okay, bye.